Welcome to the Vision by Protiviti interview. I'm Joe Kornik, Director of Brand Publishing and Editor-in-Chief of Vision by Protiviti, our new quarterly content initiative where we put megatrends under the microscope and look far into the future to examine the strategic implications of big topics that will impact the C-suite and executive boardrooms worldwide. In this, our first topic, the future of cities, we're exploring the evolution urban areas are undergoing post-COVID and how those changes will alter cities over the next decade and beyond. Today, I'm joined by Julia Thayne DeMordaunt, an executive officer with a focus on mobility innovation in the office of Mayor Eric Garcetti, along with Clint Harper, Los Angeles Air Mobility Fellow. Los Angeles, under Mayor Garcetti's leadership, is at the forefront of all kinds of mobility initiatives that will not only drive the future of the city, but will help drive the urban air mobility movement worldwide. Some exciting stuff coming out of the city of Los Angeles. So Julia and Clint, thanks so much for joining me this afternoon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Yes, it's great to be here.
So, as I mentioned in my introduction, really impressive where the city of Los Angeles is right now when it comes to sort of shaping the future of urban mobility. Why is this such a huge priority for the Garcetti administration?
It's a fantastic question. And when the mayor started his administration 8 years ago at this point, his vision from the very beginning was for LA to be the transportation technology capital of the world. He knew that LA's past was very much about poor air quality, about congestion, about building more highways. Its future needed to be the opposite of that. And so he really set out this vision powered by three E's, so equity, environment, and the economy, to have LA be setting the tone and setting and doing the future of mobility. In terms of why we decided to take that approach is because we knew that we wanted companies to headquarter and hire here. And we've made progress on that front across all types of transportation technology companies. We knew that zero emissions had to be the standard, that if we were going to get rid of that poor air quality, we had to start out with sustainable modes of transportation and use that as the baseline. And then finally, in terms of equity, it was about Angelenos. Angelenos want to try things. They want better mobility options. They need to get to work or to hospitals or to wherever else. And so all three of those E's were really at the center of this vision of LA being the transportation technology capital of the world. With that said, there's still a long way to go, and we know that to get there, we need a flexible policy framework. So a lot of the work that I do is around setting up that flexible policy framework to get to that future of mobility that we all want.
Yeah, thanks. I know one of the bigger initiatives that I've been reading about is sort of the Urban Movements Lab, which I think brings communities and local government and mobility innovators into sort of a think tank to explore the future and bring sort of some big ideas to life. And Julia, I know you're actually on the board for that effort. So can you tell us a little bit about the work that it's doing and some of the important innovations that are emerging from that Urban Movements Labs?
It's very much linked to what I just mentioned, which is that LA, in order to be that capital of transportation technology, needs to have this flexible policy future. And I think we as policymakers in LA know that the public sector, the private sector, and communities all have to work together to deliver it. In terms of Urban Movement Labs, it was set up to bring those three groups together and to help accelerate some of the transportation technology projects. In the past, we've had sort of an antagonistic relationship between public and private sectors. They haven't always gotten along when it comes to trying things and trying things quickly. And there's also been some one-off dialogues with community rather than having more of an ongoing discussion. Urban Movement Labs exist so that we can have collaboration and not antagonism between public and private sectors. And so there can be that ongoing dialogue with community. Urban Movement Labs has been fantastic since we founded it 2 years ago at this point. It's very much an outsourced innovation arm for the city, and it helps city staff to grapple with new transportation technologies. It provides some needed clarity to companies who want to test things here, but they're confused by California legislation or they're confused by local legislation. And then finally, I think having this objective sort of third-party broker with communities helps to articulate needs and co-design solutions in a way that wasn't happening before. So I'm very excited about all the work that Urban Movement Labs is doing. They're doing curb mapping and management, zero emissions last mile delivery pilots. There's an affordable electric free-floating car sharing program, which is just fantastic. And then, the sky is literally the limit. And that's why Clint is on this call too, because Urban Movement Labs is doing a lot of work on urban air mobility as well.
You mentioned urban air mobility, so let's talk about it. Sort of a fancy way of saying, I guess, flying taxis or flying cars, drones. There's all sorts of ways that we can talk about them. I know that Los Angeles is part of a pilot program with the World Economic Forum and sort of released the principles of the urban sky a little while ago, the two organizations, or LA and World Economic Forum. So Clint, can you walk us through those and sort of where that stands right now, where we are in that process?
Absolutely. So, a little background on me. I have 21 years of aviation experience, and when I really entered into this advanced air mobility space, it was to advocate for community integration and community involvement within the planning. And really, the principles of the urban sky were a response to the flurry of announcements coming from industry about their operational plans. In particular, many vehicle manufacturers targeted Los Angeles for introductory services. As the industry is pressing forward with a lot of well-intentioned ideas of how advanced air mobility to the city, they were doing it without much feedback or input, from the cities themselves. So in the case of urban air mobility, cities have taken the lessons learned from the introduction of ride sharing, micromobility, and sought to proactively plan for a thoughtful integration. And this is really the nexus, of the seven principles of the urban sky. And so, of course, safety is paramount in anything to do with aviation. And the impeccable safety record that aviation has on the commercial side of the operations is something that we want to maintain and we want to facilitate. And so safety, first principle of the urban sky. Sustainability, is the second one. We really want to improve environmental outcomes and embrace innovation to achieve, more sustainable behaviors. And this is really a systems response and the systems, take on urban air mobility, which is something that I think is critical, as new transportation technologies are evolving. And then, of course, there's equity of access. And so the FAA, equity of access is something that's very important to the FAA, but they're looking at, equity of access to the airspace. And well, we want to take that and look at, what is the equity of access for the folks on the ground, not just to the airspace itself, but, for the widest range of demographics that we can possibly enable. And being in Los Angeles, there is a lot of helicopter traffic. Urban aviation isn't new to the city, and what most people associate with that is noise. And so encouraging manufacturers and operators to embrace the low noise potential of these new aircraft is something that, we're really pushing to get out there. And we want to make sure that, as we address these, we're taking it, community by community and using a community first approach to it all. The second, also going into the introduction, the industry was looking at using ride sharing networks to really expand, what urban air mobility was going to do and how to solve that first and last mile problem. And that's another thing that, I wanted to address. I wanted to, ride share is great, but, if we really want to access as many people and give people as many options as possible, we need multimodal connectivity. And so connectivity and integration into the existing transit networks, connectivity to existing transportation links, so we want to promote, walkability and bicycle safety and it's just safe pedestrian environments, to the extent that we can with urban air mobility. The next principle of the urban sky is local workforce development. And so, what we're trying to encompass with this is understand, all the jobs that are going to be created, through the introduction of urban air mobility and advanced air mobility. And these are jobs that are going to be associated with manufacturing the aircraft, servicing the aircraft, maintaining the aircraft, and, providing, support services, and understanding what the training needs are going to be associated with those jobs and preparing local residents to fill them, is something that we're trying to understand, and we want to make sure that we're ready to fill those jobs and to support the industry as it's needed. So the last principle of the urban sky is purpose-driven data sharing. And so really what this targets is, we're trying to get to an optimized system, an optimized transportation system where all providers across all modes are able to quickly respond and meet, passenger needs and passenger demand, and also meet market demand on this.
Yeah, Clint. I mean, some really exciting things there, and I'm just curious, how excited should we be about urban air mobility? I mean, will it be a niche sort of amenity for the wealthy, or do you envision it sort of becoming mass transit eventually? And is this the big game changer that we've sort of been hearing about for a little while now? And when will it be reality? I mean, when can we expect this to sort of take off?
I think that it certainly has the opportunity to be the big game changer, with all this. What we do not want, is it to be a niche amenity for the wealthy or the privileged. We want it to be, a part of the solution. And I think that's maybe where the industry got off on the wrong foot. When they kind of advertised what urban air mobility was, and they posited it as a solution to congestion, as a solution to air quality issues, and I want to make sure that we understand that we are not the solution. Urban air mobility is not the solution. It's a part of the solution, and as we integrate this into, a wider transportation network, we have the chance to optimize the system and robust, transit connections and pedestrian connections, active transportation connections, and just really, be a game changer in that way, and that we're contributing to a more efficient and optimized system. And the thing that I think what a lot of the OEMs and the vehicle manufacturers are waiting for is aircraft certification, which is in the FAA's court right now, and it's not something that they take lightly. They want to make sure that these aircraft are safe, that they're going to respond in a variety of different environments. People ask, how's this going to respond in weather? How are we going to respond? And when power is lost, and just a host of different scenarios. The FAA really accounts for that in its aircraft certification process, and so for that reason, it is a slow and grueling process that the manufacturers have to go through. And so, with the FAA is expecting to certify an aircraft, around 2023 if all continues to go smoothly. And so, uh, with that date in mind, I know a lot of the operators are looking at a 2024 launch to get this off the ground.
Wow, sooner than I thought, and not that far off. So, last question from me, and I'll ask you to look a little further out than 2024. And that's for you to sort of paint the picture of Los Angeles and mobility in, let's say, 2030 and beyond, even beyond. Go out as far as you'd like to dream of what, can be the reality. What's that future look like for LA and mobility in 2030 and beyond?
Not being a native Angelino, I'll speak a little bit more broadly, and within my my own industry of aviation, I would like for all modes of transportation to really break out of their planning silos. I want us to work together, because our goal is to provide transportation solutions. And I think right now there's a lot of competition. People are framing urban air mobility to be a competitor with transit. And I don't think that needs to be the case. Transit, has a role in getting people from point A to point B. Um, Personal vehicles have a role in getting people from point A to point B. Ride shares have a role, and urban air mobility is going to have a role. And to make that happen, efficiently and safely and in an optimized manner, we really need to get out of these silos and start talking to each other. And how can I make urban air mobility a tool of transit? How can I make urban air mobility a tool of the new rail system, the high speed rail system? How can we complement each other, into an integrated system? And that's, my ultimate goal for 2030 and beyond is, I want us to start planning for an integrated system, that gets folks from point A to point B, in the best and most efficient way possible.
Julia, any thoughts on this?
My dream, my what I want to have reality be in 2030 is no traffic, bikes everywhere, 72 and sunny all the time, clean air, just that perfect transportation utopia as I see it. That said, I think that's not everybody's transportation utopia. So what I would love to see in 2030 in LA is that transportation is both a verb, a way to move around, and a noun, a place to stay. I think we have a reputation now, and it, for that matter, is reality that transportation is very much a way to move around LA, albeit slowly. But our streets are not really safe places for pedestrians or cyclists or scooterers, people who want to be in something other than a car. By 2030, I think LA will really be both. We'll have that multimodal network that I was describing earlier that connects Angelinos to where they want to go. It's got to be affordable, it's got to be quick, and it's got to be in a way that, gives people some joy. When we were doing our scooter trials, there were some streets in LA where there were more scooter trips than there were car trips. And people were having fun. People were using scooters because they had fun on them, not to mention that they provided a mobility service. So I think we need to promote that in 2030 and beyond. The other vision that I have is about street space. I think we need street space and street use to be right sized. We got to give some of that street space back for housing, got to give some of it back for open space. And it, like I said before, needs to be safe for people just to be on the street, let alone to be trying to move across it. The other thing I think about a lot is the mobility future and the land use future or housing future in LA are inextricably linked. That's true everywhere, but I think that's especially true in Southern California. So we've got to have dignified and affordable housing options, services nearby. And some of my other colleagues in the mayor's office are doing some really interesting work around how we get more housing in Southern California through better design and also through these more dignified options, like I mentioned. And I'd love for the transportation and the housing and the land use people all to get together to create that beautiful transportation future. So I am very, very hopeful, very, very optimistic. And although I didn't mention transportation technology in that answer, I do really think that we will be seeing much more transportation technology options in that 2030 timeframe and further out.
Yeah, and clearly, I think LA will be a model for other cities to follow because LA is clearly doing many things right, as you point out, and I'm really excited to sort of watch the future with you. So thanks again for being here.